Well, financial returns with meaningful social impact. That's the objective of Future Generation. To talk us through how it's reshaping philanthropy, we're joined by Emily Fuller, the Social Impact Director. Emily, welcome.
Thank you, Andrew.
Just now, we've caught up with you before. For those unfamiliar with what you do, tell us what it's all about, why you've set this up and your essential aims.
Absolutely. So Future Generation runs 2 listed investment companies, and they're the first in Australia to set out to generate financial return for shareholders at the same time as a stream of donations for non-profits. So the model really draws on the expertise and generosity of the funds management industry to channel capital to the not-for-profit sector. So when a shareholder invests, their money is managed by more than 30 leading fund managers who are all waiving their performance and management fees, so we can donate 1% of our assets annually to non-profits. And we've been going for 10 years, over $1 billion under management and almost 100 million donated.
All right, that's fantastic news. So I gather you have just launched your first open application process. What's that entailed?
Future Generation Australia was the original company, and it's had the same number of partners for its first 10 years. But we saw that milestone as an important opportunity to review our giving strategy to make sure that our contribution is having the best impact that it can in current circumstances, which a lot's changed for vulnerable children, which is our focus in that 10 years. And so, we did a strategic review, and that led us sort of to a closer focus on childhood adversity. And, that was really led by the sort of shocking findings of the Australian Child Maltreatment Study, which was a sort of global landmark study that showed for the first time the prevalence and impact of child maltreatment in Australia, which is affecting a lot more people than you'd imagine. So over a quarter of young people had experienced at least 3 types of maltreatment in their childhood.
What sort of age groups are you talking about here? So I see you've got to focus on, in particular, 8 to 14-year-olds. Why is that?
So the sort of entire bracket for us is 0 to 14, but there's a lot more investment in the early childhood space and the youth space. And with private money, we're always looking for those areas within our ecosystem of giving that are, high potential for social benefit, but possibly overlooked or underfunded by others. And that 8 to 14 is often called the sort of missing middle. We have a minister for early childhood and minister for youth. We have no minister for children, and that's sort of reflected in the investment that goes into that age group. And what we're also seeing is that issues that used to pop up in adolescence are now popping up earlier in late primary school. So that's a good spot for our private investment to have an outsized impact, if you like, because we're in a spot where other people might be overlooking, and we're gathering data about what's working there, to inform that broader investment in government eventually, hopefully.
So Emily, this open application attracted hundreds of applicants. You've selected 11. How have you come up with those, and can you actually name some of them?
Yeah, sure. So we've got a pretty hefty list of criteria, which might be entertaining. But I think taking a step back, we're thinking about our partners as a group or a portfolio for impact. So in selecting them, we're looking at certain characteristics in the individual organisations, but also it depends, on our aims for the portfolio as a whole. So we're selecting organisations that are complementary in that they're all pushing for that overarching goal that children facing adversity will thrive, but they're all getting there in different ways, using different strategies and approaches with different groups. And that's the way that we manage the sort of impact return and risk management, by having that complementary diversity in there. We're also really, our DNA as an investment manager informs how we do that. So we're looking for partners who are really high potential, so they've got a solid track record, but definitely enough runway to grow their impact, and we have to be able to see that our contribution can accelerate that growth.
So what are some of those partners?
Some of those partners are Karinya House, which is runs an emergency accommodation for women who are either pregnant or have a baby under 3 months old. And that's a really key time in terms of intervening to improve outcomes for vulnerable kids. Once you become pregnant, your risk profile kind of explodes, but also you're going through changes in, physically that mean it's a really high potential time for positive change. So Karinya is very strategic in their focus on that particular part of life. Another one is KidsXpress, which runs sort of trauma-informed programs for children facing adversity in not only individually, but they work across whole school communities and with families as well. So you're having all those different touch points for those children to reinforce the gains that can be made through therapy in the environments where they live and work. Any more?
No, well, I was just going to say, so I see that you're actually comparing private giving to risk capital. Why is that? And if that's the case, then you've undertaken this strategic review. How's that changed your outlook?
Well, I guess educated risk capital might be the better way to describe it.
Right.
But, private funding, if we're trying to play the most useful role we can, we have to see ourselves in the bigger ecosystem of human services, which is, the vast bulk of which is funded by public money. So with private money, in order to make it, run as hard as it can, we have to find those spots that are overlooked by others, and then we have to invest our dollars in a purposeful way so that they can be as most useful in those non-for-profits. So in practice, that means we do a lot of due diligence upfront to identify our partners, but then we provide them with funding over multiple years and funding that is untied, which means they can direct it according to their strategies and priorities, because we'll never know as much as they know about how we can shift the dial for those vulnerable families.